Hey, Chad here from Greyscalegorilla, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to get up and running with our Gobo textures in Redshift. If you're a Greyscalegorilla Plus member, you'll get access to this pack of Gobos, plus our entire material library, all of our plugins, and all of our training. So let's talk about Gobos. Gobo stands for Goes Before Optics. It's a common phrase used in stage and film lighting. It literally means to put something in front of a light to throw some interesting shadows into your scene. Gobos can emulate anything from Venetian blinds to tree branches or maybe some abstract shapes. And we've got a set of 60 in Greyscalegorilla Plus that I think you're going to like, so let's jump in. All right, so here we are in Cinema 4D. I have got Redshift going. I've got a really simple scene here. I'm going to actually pop out of my perspective view just so you can kind of see what this scene is doing. And it's a really simple scene. I've got an HDRI, I've got a couple of walls, a couple of stone blocks, 2 vases, and a fake floor. But from the right vantage point, it can look pretty interesting. And you can see here we've got a Gobo light assigned to a spotlight here in Redshift, and it's all set up. And that's what we're going to be showing you how to set up here using our new Gobo maps here down here in the Plus library. Okay, so let's turn off our finished Gobo, and I'm going to turn on a generic Redshift spotlight. In fact, I'm going to turn off every light except for this new spotlight that I just created. Now, right off the bat, Redshift spotlights are like ridiculously bright, so I'm going to go ahead and turn this down. And I am going to then have a choice to make. There's a couple different ways you can set up Gobos in Redshift. You can do it right here in the texture slot, or we can connect a graph to our spotlight. I think we're going to start with the texture method, and then we'll show you the graph method. If you are a Plus member, you have access to a nifty plugin called Drop Zone, which you can see at the bottom of my screen right here. If you have Drop Zone and you have your spotlight selected, and you drag the word texture into Drop Zone, and you let go, it's going to create the HDRI link tag for you and apply a Gobo right off the bat. Pretty cool, right? Now, if you don't want to use that workflow, of course, you can let's just undo that and get back to an undo, hopefully. And we'll just grab our spotlight here, and you can open up your Plus library and drag a texture over to the texture there, and it'll have the exact same effect. I am right now going to use the previous method with using Drop Zone just because it's nifty and it's cool. So let's do that, connect that up. And once that's connected and I have the light selected and I have my HDRI link tag selected, I can now jump into the Plus library over to the Gobos tab and start trying out different Gobos. So let's try maybe this Blinds 19, which has some nice like trees coming through there. And you can see it's not very bright. So we grab our spotlight here and let's bring it up to maybe something like this. It's a bit too bright right now, but for now it's fine. So this method is kind of interesting because now you just have a very simple way to get into your Gobo. If you want to have more control over it, you're going to use a different method. But for right now, we're going to stick with this. And the way that you would position and offset this Gobo map is going to be directly through the spotlight rotation. You're basically just going to point the light in a slightly different direction. So we start pointing this light maybe down a little bit and off to the side, something like this. And then maybe we want that light to rotate back this way a little bit more. And there you go. Let's go ahead and turn on our HDRI so we have a little bit more of that room ambient light, which is kind of cool. So this is the most simple way to get a Gobo going in Redshift. A couple other things that you want to remember too is jumping into that objects tab in your light. You can adjust of course, it's got all the regular controls of a spotlight, but one nifty kind of thing, if you jump over to details, is you can actually control the softness of the Gobo based on the softness of the shadow. So if we take the spotlight and let's just go ahead and rotate it back up a little bit against that wall, just so I can see the shadow of our vase right here. So grab that spotlight, go under details, turn on softness effects Gobos. And right now we don't have any softness on this light, which looks a little unnatural. So if we take the shadow softness and we bring it up to like maybe a 1, you can see it's affecting the softness of our vase shadow, but it's also affecting the softness of our Gobo, which is kind of a cool feature. Of course, you don't have the ability to decouple that and adjust it separately, which would be kind of neat. But doing something like this, you can get kind of a more natural look. Of course, you can just turn that off and just go straight in like that and control your softness independently of your actual Gobo. which, by the way, if you turn that off, you do have to come back over into object, or wait, no, it is in details, but let's just change this up to like 3 so we can really soften up that shadow. Okay, that is a simple way of doing it, but it doesn't have a whole lot of control. You don't have any of the control over the actual position of the gobo aside from pointing the light at a different area in your scene. So I'm going to go ahead and undo, actually I'll just delete this tag, and I'm going to go ahead and delete the texture and get us back to more of a default state here. Okay, so this other method is my preferred method of adding gobo to a spotlight, and that is going to be to create a shader graph. So let's go ahead and add a graph, and it's going to immediately add a spotlight material graph in my material lister over here. So let's select that and jump into our material editor, and you can see we've got our physical light showing up as a node here. So now what we want to do is we want to hook up our gobos into this node structure. So I'm just going to do that really quickly by coming over here, grabbing like maybe blinds 04, jumping back into, I'm dragging this node over and dropping it into my material lister here, my material editor rather. And we're just going to put this and pipe this directly in to our general color. And we'll let that update. And there you go. Now what's great about this method is now we can color correct this gobo. We can offset its UV so we can get a little bit more control over what our gobo is doing, but we haven't hooked it up to HDRI link yet. So let's just do that really quick. Grab the spotlight, grab HDRI link. Let's grab our texture here, and we're going to drag the word file name right onto HDRI link here. And now we have it all linked up, and we can jump into our library and try different gobos. Now let's try maybe, let's do maybe a window. That's cool. Let's jump into our shader graph here and offset its texture a little bit. Maybe something like that. That looks pretty cool. Let's go ahead and try maybe a different one. Let's try maybe one of the caustics that we have. We have a bunch of really great gobos in here. Do the caustics. And you can see we need to widen out our spotlight a little bit because right now it's a little bit not wide enough. So we'll just jump into our cone angle and just widen that out just like that. Now, if we want to have more caustic pattern on the scene, all we have to do is jump over to I didn't mean to delete that. Jump over into our material editor again. And this time we're going to change our scale to maybe like 1.5 and 1.5. We're just going to basically tile that, which is nice. So we can tile this up and make it look the way that we want. This particular shot, I would probably bring the camera exposure down a little bit, maybe just to get a little bit more of that dark kind of like light reflecting off a pool or something like that. So now we've got our Redshift spotlight material set up with our gobos. And let's just jump back into our plus library and select that light again. And maybe head on over to the Gobos tab right there. And let's try a couple other ones. We've got some nice ones that kind of look like tree dapple, kind of like light coming through a tree, which is really nice. Let's see. Let's make sure that's actually, I didn't have the tag selected. There we go. All right, so let's go ahead and offset this one. See where we want it to be. So this one, I don't want to repeat. Just want to do a tile of 1. And this will center it back up there. And now we have a nice like tree dapple. And in this case, we'd probably want the sun to be a little bit brighter. So I'm going to grab that spotlight and we're going to jump into the object and bring the exposure up a little bit on that. Another thing to remember too, when you're messing with gobos is you want to make sure that they feel motivated. And what I mean by that is like you don't want to have this sort of tree dapple in a shot where, let me just bring the camera out. If you can clearly see there's no tree anywhere near it, then this is going to feel kind of weird to you. So when you're picking a gobo, try to pick one that looks motivated. Specifically, what works in this scene this one works pretty well. That's the reason I chose this scene is because it's kind of versatile in that way. But if I grab one of our other blinds And we kind of mess around with the tiling, or sorry, the offset to kind of make it look like this is a window in the room and it is shining on the wall. And of course we can even adjust the rotation, do something like that. And this is a bit bright now. It's a little too bright. So I'm going to bring that exposure back down. And what this does is it feels like there's a light in the room. So it's motivated. If it's not motivated, it's going to feel really odd and off-putting, and you're not really going to know where that light source is coming from. So this is very helpful. Another really nice feature about doing it with the shader method is then you could throw a color correct in here and you could do things with it. You could tint it, you could mess with the gamma, you could do all kinds of interesting stuff with that. So yeah, that's kind of a tip there for you. The other thing that I want to talk about is the idea of, this is a bit off topic for this video, but the idea of exposure. So when I'm playing around with a gobo like this from an outdoor kind of look, I'm going to make sure that I'm blowing out my highlights a little bit to make it look like that's the sun. And I'm doing that through very bright lights and, of course, a camera exposure on my camera, or camera tag, messing around with the exposure, the f-stop actually. And I've got some render settings using the new ACES workflow in Redshift here. But yeah, so if you're a Plus member, you have access to all these great gobos right now. Plus, you have access to all kinds of other HDRIs, textures, materials, and stuff like that. So yeah, go in there, have a play with them, share what you make. We can't wait to see what everybody starts making with these things. They're a lot of fun to play with, and they can just add like a really nice little subtle, hint to your lighting in your scene. Yeah, hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.